Hey everyone, welcome to the Tech and Real Estate Podcast, where we bridge the gap between real estate and technology. I'm your host, Ariel Herrera, your fellow data scientist, and today we have a special guest. He is a real estate investor, a business owner, a world traveler, and he's also the host of ENTP Life YouTube channel. Please welcome Karl Pierre. Welcome,
Hey,
Karl.
thanks for having me, Ariel. Um, really nice introduction. World traveling real estate business guru. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, you do it all from what I've seen on your YouTube channel. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Uh, the way I found you is actually just browsing through YouTube, real estate videos, and I came across the videos that you have of your fix and flips, specifically in New York. And then I just kind of spiraled into the rest of your channel and saw that you have really great content on Airbnb as well, since you're also involved in that space. But before we get into that, if you could just give an overview of a little bit more about you, how you got into real estate, and what makes you so excited to be in the field.
Well, first, I guess a little bit on me. I come from a family that is, I guess, entrepreneurial as well, but it's like healthcare entrepreneurship. My mom's a nurse, my father's a respiratory therapist, and they always pushed like a career in healthcare on us. So I went to Stony Brook University first as a pharmacology major, and then I actually transferred into the School of Health Technology and Management and focused in like radiological studies. But it was actually through that program that even got my first taste at investing in real estate. See, what
Mhm.
happened was that the program had like a post-bac clinical year. So we would graduate and then enroll into a clinical program where we're now in an externship, right? So we were no longer students of the university. And since we were no longer students of the university, we weren't guaranteed housing.
I
So
see.
one of my buddies in the course, um, we were looking to rent a house, and then one of my friends in my fraternity, or one of my brothers in my fraternity, I should say, he was a mortgage officer, loan officer, and at that time, this is 2006, so you didn't even need a pulse to get a mortgage.
Right.
So he was like, "Yeah, we could get a mortgage through my company, and we'll just buy a house." And I was like, "All right, well, let's make it happen." And at the time, I already had a healthcare staffing firm. I was
Mhm.
doing that while I was in college, and I had some money, so I had enough money to put down like the initial deposit. And it
Okay.
wasn't even a deposit; it was just the binder to show that we were committed to making the transaction, because we
Wow.
ended up getting 106% financing. So I got my binder back, plus we got 100% on the purchase, plus 6% towards closing. This is a completely different
Yeah.
era, completely different. Yeah, because you didn't need you needed decent credit. Right? You need to have like in the mid sixes at that time,
Mhm.
and a job. You didn't even have. You just had to be employed. You didn't have to verify income. You could state that your income was $300,000 a year. It didn't matter. Um, it was such a different world back then. But that's how I got started, because we needed a place to live, and it just,
Mhm.
you know, our mortgage was going to run just as much as a house rental would run, and we decided that we were going to further subdivide that house and start renting it out to some of our other classmates and peers. And then we started to turn a profit. So once we saw that we were profitable there, we ended up getting two more properties right in the same Stony Brook University area before one before the market tanked and one after the market
Okay.
tanked. And that was really the
great. I mean, that's incredible the way you started your journey. I mean, you weren't even particularly looking to be a real estate investor. You were more so like, hey, does it make sense to rent another home? We can buy it and save money there and also make money. Then your journey just progressed. And I like how you stated that your family kind of guided you also into the health space. So do you have any of your family also involved in your business?
Yeah, so mom is my partner on the New York home healthcare company. She's not involved in Avalanche. Not that's Avalanche Care. She's not involved in
Hmm.
Aid Book, the more technical side of the company. She's looking to move towards retirement, so she's ready to ease out. And there's some more things that I want to do,
Yep.
but she's involved in that side of the business. None of my family's involved in the real estate side. Not really their tea. They do own homes. They have
Hmm.
one primary home and one rental property, which used to be their primary home. Um, but outside of that, there's no other real estate investments there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Well, I would love to get a little bit more insight into the Airbnb space in particular. Um, so first, how did you get started in the Airbnb space? I know you said you have a property, Medellin, and that you've also gone out to Italy to look at some property there. So how has that worked out so far?
It's mixed, I would say. I got into I got into Airbnb as a result of going to Medellin. I went to Medellin, Colombia for the first time, I think in 2016, and I stayed in an Airbnb
Hmm.
owned by an American guy, and essentially had sold some real estate in the States and bought this house in like the tourist zone, right? And it's like a house and storefront or like a row house. Have you ever been to Medellin?
No, I wish.
So gotcha. Yeah, it's a cool city. You should definitely check it out. I tell people it's a place that I would live outside of the United States for sure. I actually plan on moving there soon. But yeah, so I this Airbnb where it was me and a group of guys who we had spent maybe $900 a night on the Airbnb, and it was the only one that I could accommodate a large group. And when I started talking to the owner of it, him being an American guy and also being in real estate, I was asking him on the numbers that he was seeing down there, and I think he had bought the property for $280,000,
Hmm.
and like maybe he said he sold his properties in like 2009, 2010, and then he just relocated to Medellin. So if he picked it up for 280K and it's doing $900 a night on most weekends, I was
Wow.
like, this is pretty sick. And that was just one floor. So he lived in one apartment. He had it's a 3 floor building. So he had like a small Colombian bakery on the ground level. On the
Hmm.
second floor was the 8 bedroom sort of like apartment, and then on the fourth floor were like two apartments that like almost the same layout but split into two. So he lived in one, and he would Airbnb the other two out. Plus, he was getting the rent on the ground floor,
Wait, so
and I
that
was
whole
like,
building was 280?
280. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, 280, and he's living there for free, and the money maker was that larger apartment because for the
Hmm.
for the bachelors that are going down, for the big groups that are going down, wedding parties, etc. There's rarely any place that you could rent that's on Airbnb or in a hotel that could accommodate a group of that size in the middle
Right.
of that tourist zone. So that's where he was doing well, and that's where the idea was born. So I was like, man, I should probably get a Airbnb down here too.
Hmm.
So then it turns out that my wife's cousin's husband was working in a hostel in the same neighborhood,
Hmm.
and he also was having an idea of potentially doing it. So we partnered up, and we got a place in Colombia. Ours was a rental, so it's like a rent to rent strategy. We're renting and then re-renting on Airbnb.
Gotcha.
And he didn't want to do it as a large group house, and I was like, it's the way. He had the hostile thinking. He was like, no, the people who are visiting are looking for value. I don't see them paying
Hmm.
$800 or $900 a night. And I was like, dude, I just did it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll pay that price. So we opted not to do that. So we ended up doing a restaurant on the ground level, and then 5 one-bedroom apartments in the building. And that was the beginning. That was like my first jump into Airbnb, and was a bad jump, I would say. I didn't go with
Hmm.
my initial idea, which would have made money. Like we had been break even for the past 2 years, and COVID hit, and now they're not even allowing travelers into Colombia. So
Right.
we
Unfortunately.
have we have no revenue. So we're about to give
Hmm.
that one up. So it's been a complete failure. And that's where I got started. But once I started with Airbnb and saw kind of how easy it was, right? Because
Hmm.
they all you need to do is host, right? After that, they're going to start routing you your first, like they actually even promote you first. So if you're new, they want to get people into your apartment. They want to get you monetized as quickly as possible, and then
Right.
get you some reviews. And then based on that is kind of how they push you a little further, right? So no matter what, they're going to give you a big time initial push, just to
Hmm.
get you excited about being a host. And then they'll continuously market you as long as your reviews are good, and you're doing a good job.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good comprehensive of how you got into it to begin with. Unfortunately, I mean, you couldn't see COVID-19 coming as to why travelers
Yeah.
couldn't go. But it is interesting how you had to have this whole different mindset of how you were going to have this property set out,
Mhm.
unlike if you were doing a traditional like rental property here versus like a natural vacation spot. So I also want to get into a little bit more detail the technology aspect. How was it getting the property listed on Airbnb, collecting the payments, communicating with those people that were coming to the property?
As a platform, Airbnb is really good in my opinion.
Mhm.
Very user friendly, easy to use. Setting up an apartment is no different than, I don't know, posting on Craigslist, for instance. It's literally, or generating an email. It's probably the
Mhm.
better way of putting it. It's like generating an email. So you have your subject line, you have your meat and potatoes about, in the body of the email, and then your attachments or photos. Um, and that's it. Once you get all that in, Airbnb also recommends what your price point should be based on your
Okay.
location and the amount of units that you have. So you don't even have to do too much research on how you should value yourself. They kind of know what the range is, and they do something called like uh, I think it's called like flexible rates, where
Mhm.
they will flex up and down your rates based on what is the current demand in the area.
Right.
So you don't have to think about it. So like if Super Bowl were there, or there was like a soccer tournament there, and a lot of
Mhm.
people were booking, they would start to inch up your rate to make up for that supply and demand inequality. Um, then after that, like I think within within a day, you're gonna start getting bookings.
Mhm.
It's that fast. So um, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. It seems like it's pretty easy to set up. They have the
Yeah.
algorithms in the back end that help
Mhm,
to extract that whole piece for you of the market research
mhm.
for events, like you said, and that it's pretty easy, like the UI and everything, to start using the platform, which is excellent. I did want to ask, like, so even though going to like foreign countries right now, there are restrictions. I mean, there's a possibility that people don't want to work from home within their current homes, and maybe they want to go somewhere else locally. So do you think it's easy, well, it seems like it is, for someone to maybe rent out their one of their rooms in their house to get some more income during this time and allow someone else to stay there for a bit of time?
I see what you're saying. Like people who are moving more towards being digital nomads in a way, where like I can work from anywhere.
Yeah,
What am I doing working from New York City or from San Francisco or whatever? I might as well go to, I don't know, the desert and work from there because I want to change up my scene.
exactly. So go to the desert. I see this guy on in Texas or something, and he has an extra bedroom that he's putting out. And I can go
Gotcha.
for walks like when I'm outside of work. So do you think for people who it's their primary home and maybe they're just going to rent out a subsection of it, like that's pretty easy for them to be able to get onto the platform?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get onto the platform. It's totally simple because with Airbnb you could list a bedroom a whole apartment or a whole house, right? So they don't really restrict you on like you can't couch surf, but
Mhm.
you have to at least have a bedroom. So if somebody wanted to whip up an additional space just to get people in, they can do it really easily. And do I see people kind of taking that leap of faith and saying, oh, you know what, let me just continue to work remotely and start, give up my apartment, give up, all my attachments to my city. I think a few people would do that. This might be the aha moment for them to like, hey, you know what?
Mhm.
My job is letting me work from home now, and I'm working better from home. So what am I still doing in the city? Maybe a small percentage of people might start to move into that market. I don't think it'll happen. It'll happen in like waves. That would be exciting.
Right. So, what do you think, in your perspective, would be the shift for Airbnb as we see, like, probably the foreign Airbnb investments might not be the best? What areas do you think will be better if people were looking to get properties specifically for that?
I think the foreign can work as
Hmm.
long as there's value there, right? Because things in Colombia are so cheap that even really good hotels are cheap. So if somebody who's traveling from Europe or the States is going there, you know, even to pay $60 for a really nicely appointed one bedroom apartment is kind of high, right?
Hmm.
Meanwhile, my Airbnb in New York City, I charge like an average of 130 a night, and that's cheap compared to a New York City hotel. So there's the value proposition there that Airbnb offers, and I'm able to make a spread. But in a country like Medellin or Colombia or like Brazil or
Hmm.
I would say most of South America, you're not going to get much value. But if you were in Paris or Nice, France, or Rome, where where the currency is worth more and prices are generally inflated, London, I think it could do well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily about it being domestic or foreign. It's just what quality of a
Hmm.
city are you in, how expensive things are. Like I would totally imagine that in Thailand, for instance, it would be super cheap because I could get hotels in Thailand for $25 a night. Like what
Hmm.
is the
Right.
Airbnb going to charge, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's a little, yeah, that's my take on that. But where do I see things going for the Airbnb industry?
Hmm.
Um, there's people who are saying that, you know, more like secluded bookings, or they're seeing more bookings in secluded areas, but that might have been people just running away from the cities to get away from
Right.
COVID. Here in Florida, where I am, people have stopped caring about COVID. Um, they're out. The beaches are opening up. So I still see people visiting densely populated places. My Airbnb is starting to
Hmm.
get booked up again in New York City out into October.
Nice.
So people have an
Wow.
appetite for reintegrating back into society. So
Hmm.
that idea that more rural destinations may pick up, there's going to be that population of people who are still afraid. So I
Hmm.
think they might kind of choose a rural part of New York versus New York City as their vacation, and maybe just commute to New York City one day or twice and
Right.
spend the rest of the time somewhere else. But I think the overall trend that you'll see is a huge shakeout of like barely making it host, right? And you'll also see that a lot of super hosts that had maybe like 20 or 30 spaces
Hmm.
may be cutting out that extra inventory, right? Because
Okay.
I'll give you an example. So my New York City apartment, my rent is 2,300. On a typical good month, I'll generate about 35 to 3,800 in rentals.
Hmm.
So 900, $1,000 a month, I end up walking away with clean, right? So I've been vacant for since I just got a guest checked in on May 17th, and my
Hmm.
last booking was March 13th. So I've been vacant for 2 months. So that pretty much is like 4 to 5 months, 5 months of profits, right?
Yeah.
If
Taken. Yep.
Airbnb was my only revenue, right, and I couldn't absorb waiting, right, because I have
Hmm.
from now till the end of October, I'm booked. So if I couldn't absorb that, then I would have given up my apartment,
Right.
right? And just the way that I'm giving up my unit in Medellin, Colombia. So I think there's going to be a lot of super hosts who move away from having so many apartments, especially their apartments that were lower margin apartments. They probably gave those
Mm.
up. And there might have been other people who, like, I was promoting Airbnb to my friends in New York and saying, hey, you need to do this to get more income. It's easy, super easy.
Yep.
It's so freaking easy. Um, but I was like, you should do that. Had they were actively looking in January and February. Had they booked, they would be wiped out already,
Yeah,
and they would
exactly.
never come back onto the platform. So anybody who had mild success or just got started might have given up. So I could see there being almost like even a shortage of
Hmm.
Airbnb apartments. I've even had people book my apartments because their host canceled them. So
Mm.
people are like, "Oh, I'm just clearing my schedule. I'm no longer taking in guests, and sorry." So I'm getting those bounce off. So I feel like the hosts who are better capitalized in markets that they make a larger margin are going to stick around and are going to thrive. I think stays that are kind of unique, like I've been thinking about getting like a boathouse or like a sailboat. I think those sorts of stays or treehouse stays, like I stayed in an Airbnb in Brazil that was a container treehouse.
Really? How was
Yeah,
that?
it was cool, man. It was $40 a night too. Um, but that was
Amazing.
cool. It was like on in outside like it part of Rio, a section called
Hmm.
Ilha Grande. It's like the Big Island, I guess. But yeah, it was a pretty cool spot. So I think kind of weird spots like that will do well. And then I also think like think like the sailboat thing I started thinking about because I've started to learn how to sail. And I was like,
Hmm.
man, during all this, it would have been so cool to just hit the sea for a month, right? And live aboard my boat rather than be quarantined down in my apartment
Right.
in my office. So I felt like that's something that could have worked in this time period and will work going forward because I think a few people's minds may have been open, like we spoke about earlier. People who are looking for getting out of the major cities, they might entertain something like that.
So as in like they would book a boat to stay
Yeah,
in?
yeah,
Really? They have that now?
yeah.
I had
You
no
could,
idea.
yeah,
Awesome.
for instance, so I live in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and there's this
Hmm.
river that runs through downtown Fort Lauderdale that empties out into the ocean, right? And along this river, there's a bunch of boats anchored up,
Yeah.
and there's even like water access and electrical ports, and there's people who live in the river, literally. So um, people live on sailboats. They're a nice 48-foot catamaran will have four
Hmm.
bedrooms, kitchen, living room. Um, it could accommodate a pretty big group. And a boat like that, you could probably get a decent cat for like 200,000,
Hmm.
finance over 10 or 20 years, probably 10 years. And you might be able to rent that out for 300 a night, 400 a night, and maybe even
Wow.
provide a captain if people want to be skippered around. So, or they could just stay there right on the boat,
Hmm.
right, docked right up. So I think that for me, it's cool. So I might try it and see. And I've looked up, there's not that much inventory as far as boats are concerned. So for someone who has the ability to sail and who might want to, like, I could sail from Fort Lauderdale to the Bahamas, for instance, right? Or
Really?
yeah, it's only like 50 miles. So off the coast of where we are. So
Gotcha.
someone who had the skill set might make that their vacation, right? So I think things like that could work. And if they don't want to go that far out, they could just stay right in downtown Fort Lauderdale,
Hmm.
except just stay on a boat and say, this was a cool experience. So I think stays that are more experiential in nature, like just the stay itself is an experience, I think are have a higher probability of upticking.
Yeah, I am a little bit mind blown about this whole boat part. I love it
Yeah.
as an alternative, and I completely agree with you. Those areas that are unique, um, locations that are unique or desirable, and then also like Airbnb stays that are unique, like the treehouse and the boat, or even just um, like in Medellin, the first place that you stood at, how it was one of the few that can accommodate a large party. Um, so that is, I think, going to be where Airbnb goes. And I did have a question for you, particularly since you're residing in Fort Lauderdale and you said you have an Airbnb in New York.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that? Do you have someone show the who's coming, like how to get in, or is all like touch keypad and they just walk into the door?
It's actually cooler than that. I use an app called Key Cafe,
Okay.
and Key Cafe is pretty. It's I pay like I don't know $300 or $400 a year for it,
Hmm.
but essentially I leave my key inside of a locker at 7-Eleven, and this 7-Eleven is only 4 blocks from my apartment. So I just upload the person's email address, the length of their stay, the check-in time, the checkout time, and I just route them to the Key Cafe. They pick up their key,
Hmm.
they go to the apartment, they key themselves in. That's it. I never see my guest. I don't think I've ever met a single guest yet. In New York, at least. In Medellin, my partner he owned a hostel 3 doors down, so he would handle the
Hmm.
key administration. But Key Cafe and that key locker works really nicely in New York because there's 7-Elevens all over the place.
Yeah, of course.
And there's somebody else who's doing Airbnb in my building, and they have a lockbox like on one of those little fences that border the trees.
Hmm.
And I've seen somebody checking themselves in off of the lockbox. But Key Cafe, I see when they pick up, I see when they dropped off, um, and there's really not much to the interaction. And then what I do to also manage it is that I have the person who does the cleanup of my apartment. I just share the schedule with her,
Hmm.
and she just knows to go there between like once like the key is scheduled to be dropped off at 11 a.m. So she goes also to the Key Cafe, picks up the key, does her cleaning, drops it back off. Next guest checks in at 3 o'clock. So it's pretty seamless for me. I don't do anything. The only work that came in was the setup, like buying the furniture, staging the apartments, taking the initial pictures. But I was thinking about ramping up big time. I was looking to get 12 more apartments in 3 months,
Hmm.
right before COVID hit. Thank God that I didn't, because that would have really been bad. But what I'm planning on doing is I'll hire like an interior decorator, and they will be like my primary stager, and then I'll
Okay.
hire a real estate photographer, and then the same cleaning person, and all I will do is apply for the apartments remotely. Like I'll work with agents that I know in New York,
Hmm.
just apply. Once I get the okay, just activate that team and they could set up. And I feel like if I do that, and even if I was adding 2 or 3 a month in that way, it'll keep them busy, keep them interested, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't have to ever do anything, and kind of just keep it going like that. And then I also have a call center in Venezuela that I set up to assist me in both my real estate venture and home healthcare.
Okay.
So I was gonna have one dedicated resource to kind of interact and deal with the guests, because it's basic questions like how do I turn on the heat, how do I turn off
Right.
the heat,
You don't want to get those
how do I open the
calls or
window.
texts
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. So like this the same, like I either was gonna have my property manager that's in Venezuela do it, or have just one person who's dedicated to the Airbnb side, since it is
Hmm.
more touchy than your regular tenant. Because once your tenant moves in, they're pretty stable unless there's a problem. But they're always going to have those same things like what's the Wi-Fi password again, or little weird things. How can I get a package delivered here? Those are the type of questions you get. So I was going to have somebody outsourced handling that, so then I wouldn't do anything other than approve which apartments I take on.
Right. Yeah, and that's crucial. In order to expand and to grow, you have to be able to build that team and to
Mhm.
be able to hand off responsibilities to them. You put the upfront work and then you just have to manage it going forward. You've done
Yeah.
that really seamlessly, it seems like.
So the thing about me is that with my home healthcare company, it's forced me to learn how to systemize everything that I do, right? And you know, when you're starting out your business, you tend to do everything yourself,
Hmm.
and of course, you can't do everything by yourself when you scale.
Right.
So now, when I'm getting once I identify that I'm in a business that can scale, I'm automatically looking to do so by eliminating myself by being the guy who does everything. I just do one prototype and then say, okay, well, how would I create an organization around this particular business or this concept of making money?
Hmm.
So once I saw that my Airbnb in New York was working and how easily it was working, I was like, okay, I could just start steamrolling through this and getting as many apartments as possible. So, and the cool thing, and this is something that I want whoever's listening to pay attention to, is that all of those people, aside from the outsourced resource, are going to be fee for service. So they're not, the real estate agent's going to be getting their commissions through the transaction, right? Sometimes, especially if it's landlord paid, right? You could even have them
Hmm.
focus on landlord paid leases. Um, or you're going to just pay them for their finding you the listings and handling it that way. The decorator also is going to be paid per house. The photographer is going to be paid per an instance. So it's not like you're carrying these salaries. It's just your
Yeah.
initial startup costs. And if you're doing it rent to rent, you could probably do the entire operation. Let's just say it costs about 7 or 8 thousand to do one apartment in New York City between security deposit, first month's rent, furnishing. Yeah, about 7 grand.
Hmm.
You could just swipe that all on a credit card, and what are you going to be paying on $7,000 on your credit card? $100 a month. So now you're making a spread of $800 a month rather than nine, but
Yeah.
it was virtually you swiping your card. So
Yeah. You're
those
still
are,
making out really good.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, month, like you're almost doing 100% on the year. You could exceed 100% on the year on these type of apartments. You don't own
Hmm.
anything, but there's definitely value there. So if this is something that you're going to want to do as a business, um, I definitely recommend. I definitely recommend it, but really organize yourself in a way that it's not dependent on you.
Okay. That's excellent advice.
Cool.
Organization, look for fee base versus a carrying cost that you would have. And have you always been someone who's very organized, or did it come at a
No,
later point?
I'm like the most disorganized person ever. Personally, I'm very disorganized, uh, but I right. So my channel is called ENTP Life, right? So
Hmm.
I'm a Myers-Briggs personality type of ENTP, and one of the things that is notorious about us is that we are extremely messy, and we, to the outside, look to lack focus because we get involved in so many different things. And then once something new comes about, we get involved in that, and like we neglect everything behind us. So it's like a Tasmanian devil almost, just kind of in a way. But before I knew that was my personality type, what I realized was I had this pattern of starting really cool things, and whether they were making money or not, abandoning them
Hmm.
once something else took my interest, right? And I would get criticism from partners or criticism from family, like, "Oh, you're always starting something," and like, "Why do you don't? You're not focused."
Yep.
And it's not to say that I'm not focused; it's just that I'm no longer interested. So I realized that my attention span was about 6 months. And
Hmm.
I was like, well, anything that I do from here on out has to be able to afford me to pay for those type of people that I'm not. Those people who are organized, those people who are consistent, those people who don't mind routines. And I don't like messes. I just hate cleaning more than I dislike the mess.
Yep.
So what's going to happen? It's going to be a mess, right? Unless I pay somebody to keep it organized. So what I do now is everything is designed that way to kind of almost engineer my companies to kind of eliminate my natural flaws, right? So I
Hmm.
build my teams around where I'm strong and where I'm weak, right? So I'm strong at starting, I'm strong at seeing the opportunity, I'm strong at solving, complex problems in clever ways. Um, and then I make sure that everybody around me is consistent, orderly. And in order for them to not like, because I don't even want to be bothered with an old venture, right? It's like, oh man, they're calling me about,
Yeah, you've
you
already
know,
moved past that
I've
mentally.
already moved past it. So I realized that while I'm still motivated, I need to build the systems
Yep.
because I'm going to be interested at that time. So now that what I'm done, I could just hand off, you know, guidance to the next person, and they're able to kind of operate on their own. So
Exactly.
it may seem like I'm organized. It's just a skill that I learned to kind of support myself. But as
Mhm.
far as my day-to-day organization, like, yeah, it's not good.
That is such great advice, and I'm going to take that into consideration as well. Because I've been told many times, like when I say an idea, oh, there you go again, always with new ideas. Um, and I never heard someone phrase it the way that it's not that you don't want to pursue this idea anymore, you're just not interested anymore.
Yeah.
So it's about trying to systematize it before you get to that point.
Yep.
So let your mind work creatively and solve the complex problem, then put it down on paper or whatever format in order to be able to hand it off to people who their strengths lie there.
Yep. On just day-to-day routine kind of
Mhm.
things like that. That's misery for me, is to do the same thing every day.
Yep.
So that's why real estate works nicely for me, because it's always a new project. I'm always looking at bigger projects, different projects. So that keeps me interested. Once it starts to get routine, then it's just like, this annoys me. Like my flipping operation in New York,
Mhm.
um, I found myself like getting tired of doing like single family homes all over and over and over again. So I just hired out a project manager to now start managing those projects, because I would start to just say, whatever, man, I'll finish that next one. I even saw like
Yeah.
projects getting finished slower, and that's costing me money. So I was like,
Mhm.
I might as well pay somebody rather than paying interest
Yep.
to just manage these projects for me. So it's always the same pattern. Do you know what your personality type is?
I don't. I believe I've taken this exam before
Mhm.
um, for a company that I was at, but I don't remember what I got.
Yeah,
I
take it,
do
take
need to
it,
take it again. Yeah.
take it again. I have like like on any of my videos that are actually talking about the personality types,
Yep.
I have a link for it. So I would encourage you, and anybody listening, take the personality test, because it lets you know truly where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And if you know what your weaknesses are, then you can team build around that and say, okay, well, I'm weak at organization, or I'm weak at ideas. Some people,
Mhm.
you know, just can't ever come up with ideas. So they need an ideas person on their team, right? So once you know what your personality type is, and what your strengths and weaknesses are, you can start to craft a life that fits you. So
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll have that in the show notes. And I bet it also helps to know the other personalities, not even your own, to know how to speak to people and interact with the way they expect to
see the
be.
world. Yep.
Yeah. See the world. Exactly. So this has been great, Karl. And I want to now segue over to the tell all. We get to know a little bit more about you and what makes you so successful. So the first question that I have for you is, what is your daily habit?
None. Yeah. I like, for me, my habit is to be inconsistent.
Mm,
Um, I like, there's some mornings, like one thing that I kind of do regularly is, I'll do like my language learning, right? So right now I'm learning Italian with an application called Pimsleur, and I'll do my Pimsleur lessons in the mornings, right? Either before everybody else wakes up, it's half an hour a day.
mhm.
So I'll do my Italian lesson. But not every morning I'll do that. Sometimes I'll do it at night. Sometimes I'll skip a few days. That's just who I am. Um, I don't eat breakfast every day. I don't even like to be in the same city every day. So I move around a lot. I travel a lot. So there is no typical day. I guess every day starts with like thinking about whatever is the new sexy thing for me, right? Like right
Mhm.
now, I'm looking at buying a few home care agencies, and that's what's on my mind. It's like, how am I going to structure this? Okay, how am I going to raise the money? How am I going to fund this? Et cetera, et cetera. What's the long term plan? Who would be interested? What, like, so my mind starts working on whatever is freshest to me. So no
Right.
habits. I don't read books. I don't do yoga. I don't. run or take walks. No, I just wake up and I start my day,
Hmm.
and if anything, I'll do something to learn maybe. So it's going to be focused more on that.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's good. It keeps you on your toes. And if it's not a particular habit, you are consistently always learning. So I guess skipping over the book portion, because like seems like you're not really that much of a big reader as of right now. Or is there a book that maybe you've read in the past that you feel like has transformed you? Or
Um,
if not even a book, maybe if there's been some advice that someone has given you in the past, or maybe
I've
their
got
work
so
ethic.
I've got so many. I got so many examples. Okay, so books. I'll give you some books, and I'll
Okay.
give you like people. So as far as books are concerned, business books, obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad is one of
Yep.
the staples that gets the juices flowing like mentally, is like what mindset do
Hmm.
you need to have to be successful and really uh, accumulate wealth. Um, Think Big and Kick Ass by Donald Trump was the first Donald Trump book that I read. Whether
Hmm.
he writes them or doesn't write them, the books are entertaining. So Think Big and Kick Ass is a good book. Also, The Art of the Deal. I've read all of his books because they're really entertaining, and they tell a pretty interesting story about how DT functions.
Hmm.
Um, so I like his books. So I usually recommend, if I was going to recommend one of the Donald Trump books, I recommend The Art of the Deal, because
Okay.
it's like his early stage, and it whether or not it's, people will debate that it's accurate or inaccurate. I think The Art of the Deal is good because it actually starts out with like a day in his life,
Hmm.
like his day is the first like chapter. Like 6 a.m. I wake up, I do this, blah blah blah. But it shows you how he got involved in real estate, how he learned and why he likes to manipulate the media so much. I think is a valuable lesson, because that's a tool that he's been using ever since he was in his 20s, because he had like an aha moment out of a random event that he was like,
Wow.
oh my god, this is like the best commercial that I can ever get, and is freaking
Hmm.
free. And like from that point on, everything that he did and said was to grab media attention because it's free advertisement. That's the way that he sees it. So that's why he'll go out there and say outrageous things, because he knows somebody's going to pick it up. So I like Donald Trump's books, not his politics, but I like his books. Um, another book that I like, The Lean Startup.
Yeah, it's a great book. I've
Yeah,
read that one.
The Lean Startup is good. I'm I've listened to it. um,
Nothing wrong
and
with that.
let me see if there's any other business books. No, that's pretty much it on the business side.
Hmm.
On As far as people, I'm like a hip hop child, so
Nice.
definitely Kanye West is one of them. There's like this one video clip. I'm gonna try to send it to you. I have it stored on one of my YouTube accounts. It's Kanye West before he's rapper Kanye West, and
Okay.
he's like in a full on rant about stop comparing me to other producers. I'm not like
Hmm.
them. He's like, when I started making beats, I sucked. And right now I'm focused on rapping. So because I have this point of reference where I sucked at making beats and I worked on it and got better,
Hmm.
I know that if I work on rapping, I will get better. And for me, it was like such a powerful thing, because sometimes you need those personal points of reference. It's like, I went through this hard time. That was the hardest time of my life. Nothing else compares to that. So
Yeah.
this struggle is nothing to me. So I definitely have always paid very close attention to his career, because I used to be a hip hop producer as well. So
That's awesome.
I was always kind of like mirroring the top talent, Just Blaze,
Hmm.
Timbaland, Kanye, DJ Premier, Dre, those kind of guys. So I was always studying, the leaders in that space. How do they arrange tracks? What equipment are they using? So Kanye West was one of the guys, and watching his career and how he's evolved and how he just approaches creativity and business and the mindset, I like it. So
Hmm.
it's he's one of the people that I definitely look up to. Not necessarily because it's like strong business acumen, because I don't think it's very strong business acumen. But
More so
I,
mindset.
more so mindset and that
Nice.
like resiliency or resilience to not quit, and that if you actually do put your mind on a certain goal and you work towards it, that you typically you may not even hit the goal, but you'll get pretty damn close. So
Hmm.
if your goal is to make $1 billion, but you fell short at 750 million is
Still sounds good.
yeah, it's still not bad, you know. So
Yeah,
it's like, so yep. So that's me on the where do I draw inspiration and knowledge, I guess.
that is great. Um, I have one final question for you here, and it's going to be if you can give any piece of advice. So, our listeners are those who are either already in real estate or coming up to it. They may have had their businesses for a long period of time. They may be investors or agents or maybe property managers, anywhere in the space, but still on the smaller end, not in the large space yet. If you have any piece of advice, whether it's real estate or technology or just life in general, what would that be?
If you're a real estate investor, small, what would my advice be? My advice would be to keep doing deals, because I think if you're just getting started, you have to actually do a deal, right?
Hmm.
Once you do a deal, you start you truly start to learn about what you're good at and what you're bad at, and how does the market work? What are the mechanisms of actually being a real estate landlord, right?
Yep.
A lot of people have like misconceptions about it, but once you've done one transaction and you're not dead, right? You didn't die from that transaction.
Yeah.
You start to say, well, what was all of the fear, and what was all of the naysaying that I got from everybody? I'm gonna get horrible tenants. You dispel all those myths, and you learn
Hmm.
something, and then you learn even whether or not it's for you. But once you've done that deal, really pay attention and start thinking, well, how could I do more? And because that's going to be like the next question, right? It's like, man, this is working out. It's making me, $500 in cash flow, $1,000 in cash flow a month. If I just got 12 of these, I could quit my job. Or if I got 5 of these, I could, live in Spain, and that's it.
Hmm.
So once you once you get to that point of doing your first deal, it starts to like open your mind to like, well, how do I get more? I did my first deal with FHA, but I could only do that once. How am I going to get money to do the next deal? Because I got to
Get
get
more creative.
20%, you get 30%. You start to get creative. You start to ask questions. You start to meet people in the space. And once that starts happening, it's like this snowball, rolling down a hill. So once you get started, you just planted that seed, and if you follow it through, if you nourish it a bit, you're gonna get the fruits of your labor for sure.
Hmm.
So that's my overall advice: get started and learn from whatever happens, good or bad. Because there's gonna be you might hit it out the park on your first deal, or you might do really poorly on the first deal, and it's kind of hard to do poorly in real estate. It's like it it's very predictable, right? You can know how much a property is worth,
Yep.
right? You can look that up. You can know how much you could rent it for. And if you know how much you could rent it for, and that number is higher than your rent, than your mortgage payment, you've got potentially a winner in your hands. And for the most part, people pay their rent. Um, I would say more than 95% of tenants are going to be, current on their rents. Even if some of them there's the guys who are a little late every month,
Hmm.
but the majority of tenants pay. If not, there'd be so many more homeless people, right? So
Right.
most people pay for their rent. But once all right, I can make money here. Um, you start to be able to refine yourself a little more, and you start to realize how easy it is. That for the hour of work that it takes to be a landlord per property a month, and then hours and exaggerations, more like 15 minutes. Um, you're collecting thousands of dollars typically for relatively no time, and when you start to compare that towards your actual salary, you start to say, wait a second, on this property, I'm doing $2,000 a month, and I waste 15 minutes of time just checking to see if my rent deposits were made, uh, making sure that all the bills are paid because they're on auto pay. Uh, and my tenant didn't call me this week. Life is good. For
Yeah.
15 minutes, you collected $2,000. Maybe you get to keep 400 of that. The 1,600 goes into paying your bills. But that's the easiest for most people. That's the easiest $2,000 they'll make for the month.
Hmm.
So times that by 20, times it by 70, or however many units you end up getting to. But it all starts with actually doing something.
Yeah.
So don't stay on the sidelines. Even if you crash and burn, it's only money, it's only credit. Those are two things you could get back,
Hmm.
right? And there's enough things that you could do to salvage a bad deal. Get a second job to pay for it if you need to. Get a part-time gig. Like, my overall advice is don't be scared. Do a deal.
That's incredible advice. There's too much upside to be scared and not move forward. So thank you so much, Karl. I really appreciated that advice. I'm going to be definitely taking some notes when I watch this back on how I can implement some of what you had said. And I think our viewers will as well. So,
And one more thing.
yeah,
I'm sorry. Like, I like to talk.
sure.
But
You have the floor.
yeah. Another software that I use is
Mhm.
one called Avail, Avail. So they're
Okay.
avail.co. I'm not sure if you heard of Avail.
No, I haven't.
It's a
What do
it's
you
a
use it
pro
for?
it's a property management platform. So I do my lease management on there. I could post my apartments on there. So if I could post to like Redfin, Trulia, Zillow directly from there. I could do like market research. Let's just say I picked up a property in a new city,
Hmm.
and I could just pay for what is the range of rent, all the market data for that particular address, and I could collect my rent from there. So, and I also could manage my tickets from there, and it's pretty cheap. So, if those of you who are looking for software to manage your properties with, I highly recommend Avail. And a cool thing about Avail too is once somebody has been an Avail tenant, they have
Hmm.
like an Avail profile. So they could start applying with that profile to their next property. So you'll
Oh,
find
nice.
that you send somebody the application, and they just sign in with their information, and it gets repopulated with their rental history, their employment history, and it makes the application process that much faster. So if you were looking for software just to manage your portfolio with, um, they say it's kind of good for people with smaller portfolios,
Hmm.
but I have quite a few tenants on there, more than 70, and that's more than what they recommended for, and it's working out fine for me. And before then, I was handling everything with spreadsheets and you know the good old fashioned way.
Right. This is a
So
lot
for
easier.
me, this was like, this is amazing. Yeah.
Have you heard
So
of Cozy before?
I've heard of Cozy, but I haven't checked out the platform.
Okay. I've heard of that one. Haven't checked out. I've checked it out. Haven't checked out the one that you mentioned. I'm definitely gonna do a future episode of comparing the two and see which
Yeah,
one's better.
awesome.
Um,
I'll definitely tune in.
yeah. Before we wrap up, could you please let the viewers know where they can find you, Karl?
Yes. So I can be found on YouTube at ENTP Life. So Echo November Tango Papa Life, like living life. And so I think it's the same on Instagram, but I can't stand Instagram, so I don't really maintain my Instagram page. But that's where you can find me on YouTube. And I'm also launching a program on how to invest in real estate. It's called Killing the American Dream. It should be out any day now. It's just getting like vetted by the software company that I'm using that's going to manage the course. So it's about 15 hours long, 14 episodes, 15 hours of how to invest in real estate, 1 to 4 family homes. It's going to be a paid program, but I made it cheap enough that, for people who want to spend very little money, it's
Mhm.
only $97, refundable, whatever. And then if they want to buy in completely, like for that platform, And anything else that I produce, actually, like, so if you buy into Killing the American Dream, and I also I'm thinking about doing one for home healthcare as well. You get access to anything that I produce, any content that I produce permanently. That's 2,500. And within that program, I do something unique that I wish they had offered me when I was kind of going through like the seminars and the training circuit. Was an invest and learn option. A lot of these like flip that house guys and rich dad poor dad, even though they're pretty scammy with how they approach their seminars, they focus on upselling you into mentorship, that you're paying
Right.
for. You actually pay for a mentor. And I went to one of those guys and I was like, you're trying to charge me $25,000 for mentoring to teach me a guaranteed system to make money in real estate. Why don't you let me invest in a deal with you, and then I'll learn, and then you can keep the profits from the deal,
Hmm.
and I get my 25K back. And they're like, no, absolutely not. That's not, we don't do that. And from that day, I was like, you know what? If I ever do this, I'm going to do it that way, because I don't think it's necessarily right to charge somebody for access to you. Like either hire me as a consultant and I'm going to charge you directly for that, but don't just sell me on this dream of being your mentor and I'm not even doing a deal with you. Like that 25K could be your deal money. Like
Yeah.
why are you spending it on a mentor? So I ended up coming up like in the middle of the course. I was like, you know what? I'm going to let people do deals with me. And if they want to do a deal with me, they come up with a certain amount, depending on, what's required for the deal. And then they'll work on the deal with me hands on, and we'll be partners in that transaction. They could see exactly how I work, access to all my resources, et cetera, et cetera. So if that was something that people were interested in, if you go to entplife.com, which I
Hmm.
guess is my website where this is kind of hosted, you could either pre-register depending on when this comes out, or register for whatever level of access you want. I don't think there's many other programs like it, because I'm just sharing the same kind of content that I share on YouTube, except it's actually more detailed, more focused than my randomness on my YouTube channel. But it's a complete course, but it's designed to walk you through it as if you've never done a deal, and
Hmm.
all the things that I've learned along the way in a orderly fashion, so that by the end of the entire program, you have all the tools, all the resources in place for you to go out and do a deal. And if you are afraid to do it on your own, then you could do one with me. And that's kind of where they could find me.
That is incredible. Congratulations
Oh,
for almost
thank
having
you.
that up. Yeah. And I'll have
Yeah.
that in the show notes as well. All right.
Hopefully,
So,
hopefully be up soon. Yeah.
yes. Well, thank you so much for your time, Karl. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to follow more of your journey.
And thank you very much for taking the time out to actually bring me on. Like I said, I like to talk, and hopefully, I've inspired somebody at home to either take the dive into Airbnb or even owning real estate. So thank you.
Excellent. Welcome. Take care.